Okay, chapter 2.2, adding and subtracting rational numbers. I think that you might find this a bit of a review. Basically, the rational numbers are decimals and fractions, and we're going to be working on that. Example number 1 starts with find negative 8 thirds plus 5 sixths. Okay, so these are just fractions. The problem is we have a different denominator, so we'll have to fix that. Change that so that instead of thirds and sixths, we have sixths and sixths. Alright, and if I want to change thirds to sixths, I want to multiply by 2, and I want to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. It's kind of like multiplying by 1. And I get a negative 16 sixths plus 5 sixths. And then I just have to be able to think to myself, what is a negative 16 and a positive 5? Well, when you have a negative and a positive, you just subtract, and 16 take away 5 is 11. And then since negative 16 is more negative than 5, you keep your negative number, and it becomes negative 11 sixths. And I'm pretty sure that gets you there. Other than sometimes people, math books and math instructors and other people like that, want you to put it in as a mixed number instead of an improper fraction. So this is a fraction greater than 1 or smaller than a negative 1. So we'll change this to negative 1 and 5 sixths. Okay, because that's what 11 sixths would be. Negative 1 and 5 sixths. And that's kind of the gist of it. We'll go ahead and we'll do a decimal one real quick. We've got negative 4.05 or negative 4 and 5 hundredths. And we're adding 7 and 62 hundredths. 7.62. So we have a negative number and a positive number, and again what we want to do is just subtract them, and because the 7 is more positive than the negative 4, 7 is bigger than 4, then our answer is going to be positive. We subtract, so we start with the bigger one and we subtract 4.05, and then you have to borrow and do all of that fun stuff. 12 take away 5 is 7. 5 minus 0. Bring your decimal down. 7 take away 4 is 3. So 357. And we might, we just subtract, and then we decide which number is greater. Well, 7 is more positive than negative 4 is negative, so we're going to keep a positive answer here. And that's just how that pretty much generally works. That's how you're going to do everything in this assignment. Now, we'll do one more. They have some subtracting rational numbers, and what happens if we have something like negative 4 and 1/7 minus negative 6/7? And this is just like if we have 4 minus a negative 1 or something like that. Minus a negative really means 4 plus 1, so that would be 5. This is just an example. We're going to do the same thing here, so we're going to write negative 4 and 1/2 plus 6/7. Hopefully that makes sense. We've changed that around so that it's slightly simpler. And then we have to change this again so that we have an improper fraction. 4 and 1/2 is 9 halves. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9 halves. It's still negative. Plus 6/7. Now our other problem is that we don't have a common denominator, and halves and sevens both go into 14ths. Okay, 2 goes into 14ths 7 times, so we multiply by 7/7, which is kind of like multiplying by 1, and 9 times 7 is 63. Oh, what did I do? 4 and 1/2, it was 4 and 1/7. The example actually had 4 and 1/7, and I used 4 and 1/2. I see how my answers are getting a little bit crazy with theirs, but I guess this still works because it's still correct. It's just not what the book has down. So 7 goes into 14 times 2, and that'd be 12/14. And now when we add these, we get 63. Ooh, it's negative 63, which means we have to do 63 minus 12. Okay, so the deal is when you have a positive 12 and a negative, you just subtract them. Take the bigger one, minus the smaller one, and then you decide what your answer is going to be. 6 take away 2 is 1. Sorry, 3 take away 2 is 1. 6 take away 1 is 5. That's 51. But because it's really a negative 63 and that's more negative, we're going to keep the negative sign. So we have, actually, we're skipping over here. This is our work. 63 take away negative 63 plus 12 is negative 51/14. I'm afraid I probably should show you how to do this the other way with the 7. 4 1/7 minus negative 6/7. So I guess negative 4 1/7 minus negative 6/7 looks like this. Okay, and again, this is just like negative 4 take away a negative 1. I've kind of rounded 4 down to 4 1/7 down to 4, and I've rounded 6/7 up to 1. But this is a simpler problem. Negative 4 plus 1, which would be negative 3. Okay, so this is kind of just an example of what it would be without the fractions, but we're still going to do the same thing. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 1 is 29/7, still negative, plus 6/7, because minus a negative becomes plus. And when you have negative 29 plus 6, you end up with 29 take away 6, which is 23, excuse me, it's still negative 7ths, and that ends up being 7 goes into 21 3 times with 2/7 left over, and remember that it's negative, so it continues being negative. Okay, and this is about negative 3, and approximately is what this little sign means, and that's what I came up with in my little sample. Okay, approximately negative 3. And it's a good idea to do this once in a while to figure out how to estimate the problem, just so that you can see what you're getting. All right, that's the end of this one.